Good afternoon and welcome to Little Steps Facebook Live. As you can see, we are in a different zone at the moment. We are doing a Facebook Live from the comfort of our own home and offices due to the coronavirus outbreak. So just a few friendly reminders before we get started. Let me just check if everything, there's a little bit of delay. So if there is a delay, I'm sorry about that. We'll just keep going. So just a few friendly reminders before we get started. We are still live twice a month, and if you wish to be reminded of our live sessions directly to your phone, please check our Facebook events calendar each week and click the ones that you're interested in. Don't forget to sign up for all our weekly newsletters across major cities in Asia, from Hong Kong to Singapore to Kuala Lumpur and beyond. The link is in the description. And feel free to ask us any questions during the live interview, of course. We are live, so we can answer your questions directly here and now, but we can also answer them after the interview. So feel free to ask us any questions, comments during and after the interview. So let's get started with our topic today. Today we are talking about how to cope as a family during the COVID-19 outbreak. And the COVID-19 virus has placed quite a lot of disruption in our family lives. Schools are closed until March 16th here in Hong Kong. Many parents are working from home as well as homeschooling their children, and most events have been canceled. There's a panic that can be felt across the city. And today we invite Dr. Adler from the Adler Family Center, who will talk us through how to help your children and yourself during the virus outbreak in this virtual Facebook Live. Very welcome back to Dr. Adler, who is the director of the Adler Family Center here in Hong Kong. He's a licensed psychologist in the US and received his doctorate in clinical psychology from Yale University. He's assessed and treated a wide range of psychological difficulties in the past 18 years. We've had interviews with him before on anxiety and ADHD, subjects that he specializes in. Dr. Adler, welcome. Hi.
Well, thank you. Hi. Good to speak with you again, Nikki, and
yes,
speak with the Facebook world about obviously a subject that is very close to all of us here in Hong Kong, and unfortunately increasingly throughout the world at large now.
Indeed,
so it's my pleasure, and I think this is a very important time to talk with parents and with families, and of course with our children.
Absolutely.
What has been going on in Hong Kong.
Well, thank you for coming here, and thank you for being live with us.
My pleasure.
Just a personal question, how are you coping during this outbreak? Is life any different for you at the moment?
On a personal level, it hasn't changed too much.
I'm glad to hear it.
Okay, so my family's back in the US.
Okay.
And my teenage daughters, they ask if I'm still alive.
Yes.
I tell them, yes, I am.
I'm glad to
So
hear
they give me a message. Everybody messages. Nobody talks anymore. They send me a message, Daddy, are you still alive? And I say, yes, Daddy's still alive.
Well, we have actual evidence that you are alive, so we have a live interview.
And they will see this interview too and critique it as well.
Exactly. So just before we get started, we are splitting up today's chat into 3 areas of focus. So we are, the first area will be helping your children with fears about the virus. The second is managing your family's stress. And the third is achieving a work-life balance. So let's get started with our first topic, which is helping your kids with their fears about the virus. So first question is, how does one approach such a topic as a virus outbreak? And at what age should it be discussed with your children?
Well, that's such an excellent question, Nikki. And it really depends on the age, and I'll say developmental level of a child. So chronological age, and I think many parents now realize and know this and have read this because of all the information we have now available online.
Yeah.
And a lot of books that people have read about parenting. Chronological age is not the only marker of development. It's how socially and emotionally mature a child is. So when we talk about ages, we're talking about not just chronological age, but also emotional age as well, emotional social age.
So
just sort of look at the different age groups.
Of course.
So we're talking about very young children. On that, I mean before ages 5 or 6. I would not go into any details at that age about the virus. I think it's bound to be quite frightening. Now, keep in mind that all children are going to be aware that something is different.
True. No matter what age.
That's absolutely correct.
Yeah.
And what I think is important with this very young age group, when they have questions or even to be proactive, is to explain that we're doing some things now. We're doing some things to make sure that we don't get sick, like wearing masks, washing our hands when coming into the home and before eating, and or both. And also, which is something which I was just telling you off air, that I don't know enough of, is cleaning devices, usually our mobile
iPads,
phones.
iPhones, definitely get the alcohol spray and spray.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So for that group, I would emphasize the safety aspect, that we're really making efforts to keep all of us feeling healthy and not getting sick, keeping it really basic.
Yes.
Then we get to the slightly older age group, and this is probably where social media comes in, plays, and then of course with teenagers as well.
Absolutely.
Limit as much as you can the amount of time a child or teenager is on social media. Now, you can't limit it completely. That's not reasonable. But limit the amount of time. And we'll talk later about activities you can do with your children to help occupy them in other ways, so they're not necessarily on the computer. Whether it be going to social media or playing video games, which is another whole topic.
Of course. But how does one, as a parent, approach a teenager and talk about the virus in a comfortable manner?
So for a teenager, one has to talk in some detail.
Yes, of course.
Teenagers want to know. They're inquisitive, which is good. They should be inquisitive.
Yes.
They want to know the details. So talking about statistics, maybe going over, whether it be the South China Morning Post, the New York Times, going over statistics that they see.
Yeah.
And then talking about what they mean, what they don't mean, what we know, what we don't know.
Yeah.
And using critical thinking skills to question the accuracy, the veracity of the information, and to really engage them. It's almost like a school project.
Yeah. No, but it's a good time for it now. People are at home anyway, bringing out the newspapers, printing them out, having a sensible conversation with your children from a tweens or teens age is a good opportunity.
Knowledge, and I think this begins in the teenage years. Knowledge, developing a deeper sense of knowledge and be able to critique what's going on gives a sense of control over something.
Yeah.
One might call it an illusion of control, but it is a sense of control over the information one has and is available.
Of course.
The middle years, the primary school years, as I might say here, I would be more concrete as a parent.
Okay. And what do you mean by that?
I have a lot of questions, for one thing. And I would encourage any questions at any time. So, children can ask all about different things. I would be open and I'd answer them. I'd also share a little bit about one's own nervousness, not anxiety. Anxiety, as I mentioned off air, is an extreme reaction to something, extreme nervousness that goes beyond what the reality is. Stick within the reality.
Would you advise parents to tell their kids that they are nervous themselves?
Yes, but at the same time, quickly then to add that you're coping with that nervousness.
Yes.
And we'll talk later about ways that adults can cope better. Parents in particular can cope successfully with it. I would mention some of the things that parents are doing. For example, you might say, and again, we'll talk about this later, is that I'm talking to more of our friends, our family friends, or my friends.
Yeah.
It's, a parent who has friends who the kids don't know about, what it feels like to have people feel very nervous around them.
Absolutely. And
talking about the virus itself and keeping it in very concrete terms, that there is a virus that is going around. We're doing everything we can to protect ourselves from it, and then going over with the details that we talked about a few minutes ago.
Of course. Which brings me on to the next question. How do you explain to your children, no matter what age, why they have to take these precautions, why they might have to wear a mask, why they might have to why they wash their hands? How do you explain to them these things that they need to do without causing some type of fear in them?
Very good question. I think, and I know, Nikki, that what's important is to keep everything reality-based.
Yes, good.
That I think it's fair to say that the chance of getting the virus is quite low.
Absolutely. I'm quite
low, and I think it's important to tell children that, both children and teenagers.
Yes.
We're talking about primary school age kids and then teenagers. I think it's important to tell them that.
Mm-hmm.
And that we do these things to give ourselves even more protection.
Of course.
So the reality is that we're not likely to get it, but these things that we do give us even more protection.
Understandable. And of course, with a teenager, you would say it in a more, in a way. I wonder if teenagers, what I'm trying to say is, I wonder if teenagers might, as they are, might scoff at such things, washing their hands, wearing masks, on especially with teenagers always trying to be cool. Let's say they might not want to take these precautions. How does it, as a parent, really advise a teenager?
Right. So teenagers tend to be risk-taking.
Yes, exactly.
And
that is a perfect word.
You can't force a teenager to do any of the things that you just mentioned, whether it be hand washing, whether it be wearing a mask, cleaning one's mobile phone. You can't force them to do that. What you can talk with them about is what you do as a parent.
Yes.
That you want to make sure you, as best you can, as an adult, as a person, not just as an adult, as a person, that you want to protect yourself and your family.
Of course.
But I think you have to acknowledge and be very open with any teen that you can control what he or she does. That is the reality. You can't control what they do. And that's a hard thing as parents of teenagers myself, who are hardly rebellious, but are going through some typical teenage issues of being independent. You can't force them to do certain things that they believe strongly about.
Of course.
But you can just show as you can offer yourself as a role model.
That is a good answer. Yes, just try to be a role model.
That's all you can do.
Yeah. And then that brings me on to the next question. How do you create a healthy routine at the moment at the house when people are, when schools are closed and many parents are either choosing to work from home or have been advised to work from home? I can imagine it's very stressful for families to be this amount of time with each other.
Oh, yes. And the answer is complex because
yes, I can imagine.
Each household is going to be different. Which one? International schools, most of them have set up some kind that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
And I'm not including every school. That's why I say most.
Yeah.
Have some kind of e-learning platform.
Yes.
And the degree to which it's scheduled as a regular school day versus just part of the day in which an assignment is given varies from school to school. And then also how much video contact or that a student or students have with their teachers varies. So some schools, as I mentioned, have a full school day. Let's say going from, let's say, 8 something to 3 o'clock or thereabouts. So in those cases, presumably you have a routine already built in for that time.
That is true.
In those cases, you want to look at the after-school hours. So it's virtual school, and then the realistic after-school hours, the real after-school hours.
Yes.
And you want to develop, or in the other case where maybe the student is just given an assignment in the morning, or is emailed an assignment, then what you want to do is create even a larger routine for the whole day.
Okay.
So routine should be predictable.
Yeah.
The child should know what's going to happen and consistent. You do the same thing every day.
Okay.
Those predictability and consistency are the two things that makes a routine work. So what do? You have to look obviously at the activities that or tasks that need to be done.
Yes.
So you want to sit down with yourself or with a significant other and then develop a schedule that makes sense based on that. And allow for some flexibility because you're going to have to modify that schedule.
Of course.
Schools spend a lot of time and years, presumably, developing their schedules for students. You're doing this on the fly as a parent. So you're going to have to make some quick modifications.
Do you advise parents to look for this information online, talk to teachers? How do you think they should?
Absolutely. Absolutely. As much as possible, talk with teachers.
Yes.
To get their input about what they think and what they believe is a reasonable amount of time. Again, it depends on the kind of assignments that students are getting, the kind of teaching that's being offered.
Yes.
If it's a full day schooling, then you have issues of doing homework, how much time to spend.
Exactly.
and we'll talk about motivation in just a moment to do homework.
Yeah, absolutely.
When there isn't that normal structure of going to a physical school building.
Mhm.
What I'd say also in terms of a schedule too is that for teenagers, I would collaborate much more with teenagers because
Okay.
they want to feel a part of developing that schedule.
That is very true. That is very true. I feel that they probably want to have an input. And I think even kids maybe 10, 11 in their tweens already want to have some kind of input into
Well,
their, or
that's
see if
that's
they
exactly
can.
right. We say tweens. I think we can almost call those teens these days.
Absolutely. It's hard to
Well,
distinguish
there's a
nowadays.
lot of factors that go into that. Another discussion.
For you and I, we still think 14, but teenagers are getting younger and
Oh,
younger.
no, I'm older than you. I think 16, 17.
Oh,
No.
wow. Yeah, I'm thinking 14.
No, but yes. I mean, that's a whole nother fascinating discussion.
Yeah.
But yes, so yes, I think the tweens I would include in that. So
Okay.
10, 11, 12. Again, it depends on the social and emotional maturity.
Of course.
And that's a judgment you make as a parent.
Yes.
I also would talk to other parents and seeing what they're doing.
That's a great idea. Yes.
And then again, that goes back to, we'll talk a little bit later about having a good developed social network and social circle.
Of course, of course. Well, for those who are just joining us, we are doing a virtual Facebook Live today with Dr. Adler. And the topic today is how to cope as a family during the COVID-19 outbreak. We've just delved into the topic of helping your children with fears about the virus. And we're going into our next topic, which is managing your family's stress. And first question will be how to motivate your children to do schoolwork. We've just talked about how to have a schedule and how to stick to that schedule, but then you're still in your own home. It's very hard.
This is what I hear from the parents of my clients almost continuously throughout the day.
Yes.
Almost continuously. And what I've discovered, and a lot of this is common sense, but this is what I've learned.
Yes.
That I think sometimes in these extraordinary times, you have to take some extraordinary measures.
Of course.
Now, they're not that extraordinary.
No, but I completely understand. We are in an extraordinary moment right now, something that we did not expect. And now we have to do something to counteract such a thing and to evolve with such things rather than go against the grain.
So again, as we talked earlier, having a structure and routine.
Yes.
So the time that you do homework. So you don't play video games. You don't do other things until you finish. And again, but you actually develop that schedule. So from, let's say school finishes at 3, if you're doing a full day of classroom learning. So some 3 o'clock, school ends.
But would you advise, sorry to interrupt, would you advise to create a corner for school work? Because I imagine, even myself, I find it quite hard to be motivated working from home. So I created more of an office environment to kind of link into.
That's a great idea. And actually, to take that even further, you could even, and I think, you can make materials that almost replicate a school classroom and involve your child in doing that.
Yes.
You could have, now with a younger child, you can do some fun things. You can do like, they do this mostly in preschool and nursery schools. Yeah. You can do the days of the week and
exactly.
some fun things like that. Older kids might even enjoy that as well. Making kind of like a one-room schoolhouse. Absolutely. You can have a lot of fun with that. And I know school-age kids would love to do that. Even teenagers might enjoy that too.
I think even teenagers as well, because I find that if you would have a teenager to work in their own room all day long, 7 days a week, I think eventually their motivation might disappear after a while, because it's just not school.
It would, yes. So I think you're right, Nikki, creating an environment, physical environment. They also create an environment of the child or the teenager feeling appreciated for doing work in a way that he or she's not used to and maybe uncomfortable with.
Yes.
In an environment that also there's a great deal of anxiety, of anxiety within, people aren't going outside as much.
Absolutely, and you can see it yourself. I was in TST the other day, and it was quiet, and it was unnerving to see such a busy hub being so quiet. And even though I'm quite comfortable, it still felt odd to me. So I imagine with children, it's even more of a.
That's right. It is painfully obvious in Hong Kong that the hustle and bustle that is so typical of Hong Kong
Exactly.
is much less of a hustle and bustle, and and more of a busy town
Yes.
than a city. So with all the changes that are taking place, what I'm advocating for is that parents do a lot of rewarding of not bribery, not giving treats or physical rewards in advance. But once something has been completed, that the child will get two different things: praise,
Yes.
and also, and this, even though you don't give it in advance, you let the child know in advance that if he or she works, let's say does homework for an hour and a half, there is some kind of physical reward or some kind of privilege that he or she could get.
Yes.
So with teenagers, we talk more about privileges oftentimes, being able to
half an hour more on social media.
Playing video games. What did you say?
I said half an hour more on social media.
Social media, yes. Watching Facebook Live videos from Little Steps, yes. That's what's allowed in most houses. So privileges for younger kids, you might have more physical rewards. A lot of people disdain using food. I think food is okay for most kids unless they're eating issues or feeding issues. I think food is fine. We have a limited array of things available to us, of course, especially if we're not leaving the house as often. But be prepared to reward physically with physical things, especially for primary school age kids. And then for teenagers, maybe some more privileges. These are things that you might not do as much of.
Of course, yeah.
No, we as parents want kids to feel intrinsically motivated.
Yes.
But again, these are extraordinary times. So we have to use measures that we don't necessarily use during a typical school year.
And how would you address children's and even parents' boredom at this moment? Even though you might create a schedule, you might still have a routine, still everything is so interrupted with school taking such a big chunk out of people's daily routine. I imagine there's a lot of boredom for all ages.
Absolutely. Oh, that's another thing that I'm hearing a lot from my clients and from their parents. The boredom that they experience, which ends up where a lot of kids, especially boys, but also girls, are playing video games for many hours each day. And I mean many, many hours each day, which is not healthy. It is not healthy.
And what do you suggest to do? I mean,
I think to use one's creativity as much as possible.
Build a fort.
Build a fort. Create, not just play a game, but create a game.
True. And would you,
or make a video? Make a video.
Yeah.
So a lot of kids love to watch YouTube.
TikTok.
Why not make a YouTube video? We all have cameras and microphones these days.
Absolutely.
Why not make a video?
Create your own Facebook Live.
That's right. With your own YouTube channel. I think the only caveat is that parents should be involved.
I think it's hard for parents to be involved in such a digital age nowadays. I think we've become very accustomed to our digital devices, and now with so much more time being added, we are even sticking more to our digital devices. So how do we step back from those?
Yeah. What's on the topic, if I recall?
I've done many.
I seem to recall one over the past. It's been a year since I've been.
Yeah. Well, we've done of course ADHD, and then the last one we've done anxiety on.
Yeah, I think there was one also on social media.
Social media.
And children. I do recall that. I have to go back and look. But what could we do? I think getting involved is. I mean, one of the things we try at first is to find other enjoyable activities. The hard, cold reality, the hard, cold truth here is that kids, there is an attraction on social media that we shouldn't necessarily fight against. I think to gently monitor what our kids are doing, not being too intrusive, but to monitor what they're doing and to be involved in some ways.
So would you even advise maybe playing the video game with your child?
That's right. Or ask the child, show me how this works. I don't understand how this game works. I've heard about Snapchat. I don't know how Snapchat works.
Of course.
Now that approach may not always work.
Yeah, I understand.
Once I told my younger teenage daughter, who's now 17, to show me how it works, she made extra efforts to show me not to show me. But it's always fun to find that avenue.
Of course, and that leads me on to the next question, which is how to create such games. I mean, we don't all possess such creativity, or how to think of make school assignments more fun, how to motivate, where to find such materials, where to get such advice when you yourself are lacking in such creativity.
Well, you know, there are a plethora of websites
True.
that provide learning that is more visual. We can't do kinesthetics in terms of touching so much through the video screen.
Yes.
Without destroying our screens. Yes. But National Geographic Kids is one of those sites.
Okay.
That I think is really wonderful. The thing is, if you just Google best educational websites, kids or children, you'll come up with best of lists. National Geographic Kids comes near the top of a lot of those lists.
Okay, fantastic.
And there are a number of more straight academic sites. Those are probably not quite as interesting, although they try to be quite creative. But I mean, something like National Geographic, where you can, go on a journey to another country, another civilization, I think is intriguing to most teens and even tweens.
Would you advise parents to get together and make these classrooms together? I know it's at a heightened time when people are quite anxious.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's something I was going to mention is creating, you could even create a school amongst friends.
I agree, yes.
The activity we talked about a few minutes ago about creating a one-room schoolhouse where you could invite some friends over with their parents.
I think it would.
Part of that.
I think it would ease anxiety of parents as well. I think it would be quite hard. I've been a teacher myself, and to create such schoolwork is quite difficult. And I can imagine as a parent to kind of think to make school assignments for children can be quite hard. But I think with the help of your friends, neighbors, parents, you can ease this kind of anxiety and learn from each other.
Absolutely. Yes. And that kind of creativity.
Yeah.
Whether it be online, using programs that exist, or maybe even better, in your own home.
Yes.
Creating an environment, the one-room schoolhouse, which could take on the shape many different forms depending on your own creativity, the child's creativity. You may not have to do that much yourself. Maybe your child or children just take over that project. It'd be great to have other children involved.
Absolutely. No, yeah, I think it's important for children to still be around each other even during such heightened times of a virus break. I do feel that children are feeling quite lonely because they don't see each other anymore.
Remember, schools are closed, in my understanding, is because of the fact that you might have 30 or more kids in a classroom.
Yes.
In a relatively small space and breathing on each other.
Yes.
We're talking about a couple of kids here.
Exactly.
Like, it's very different than a classroom.
I agree.
Keep that in mind.
I agree.
Don't let the anxiety, this is a more general message, overtake you and restrict what you do in terms of raising and educating your kids.
Absolutely. All right, we're moving on to our next topic. For those who have just joined our Facebook Live, we are doing a virtual Facebook Live today with Dr. Andrew Adler. We are talking about how to cope as a family during the COVID-19 outbreak. And we've split our chat up into 3 topics. We've discussed helping your children with their fears about the virus. We've discussed managing your family stress. And now we're moving on to achieving a work-life balance. Now remember, this Facebook Live will be on our site. So if you have missed our Facebook Live or our previous topics, just you can check the interview after the live set is done. So moving on, achieving a work-life balance. I think this is a very important topic for parents, especially. I think that parents, even for those who are not currently in Hong Kong, many parents, especially my colleagues, a lot of my colleagues have left to their own countries, and that has also disrupted their own lives, of course, not only the lives of their children. So creating that work-life balance, how to create a routine for yourself as a parent, and how do you stick to it? I think that is one of the most...
So it's routine and maintaining social networks.
Okay, so that's...
So those are two things. Just like with your children, you want to maintain a routine.
Yes.
So if you have work, if you're working from home, and as a psychologist, we can't work from home. We can't, although I see clients virtually, they
Yes.
still schedule sessions.
Yes.
Now I'll do work over Skype or WhatsApp, but there's still sessions.
Of course,
But
of
when
course.
you have work from home and you're given assignments, let's say, from your supervisor or employer
Mhm.
to work on at home, you may be given much more leeway. You need to have a schedule.
Yes.
And some people have more difficulty with that than others. That brings us to the next part, is to turn to others. It doesn't have to be people you work with, friends
Do you
who might have better organizational skills than yourself.
That's a very good. As we were discussing before on how to bring children together, would you advise parents maybe to also come together and maybe create?
Absolutely right. To have social events, and again, depends on people's general lifestyles. I mean, people have vastly different ways of socializing. I mean, some people socialize more publicly. That may be something that might be a change for them, that people might socialize more at home.
Yes.
But certainly to have, again, like with children, to have people come over and go over other people's houses as much as possible, as much as reasonably possible, makes a lot of sense. Now, if people are for overseas, or people who have friends who have gone overseas to ride out the virus, or maybe they have moved.
Excuse me, Dr. Adler, my battery is about to go, so let me just charge.
No problem.
Conversation.
I can hold on.
Get my battery charger. All right. Back in business. Apologies.
That was quick.
Yes.
Okay. So you can maintain virtual networks too.
Yes.
You can talk to people over Skype, WhatsApp. We have all these wonderful technologies that can be used well to maintain networks. I mean, having and this can be scheduled, and part of your routine is to talk to certain friends on a regular basis.
Yeah, of course.
It might mean, if you have several children, putting aside time each day to do that and schedule that in.
We have a question come in from.
Oh, good, great.
Yes, from Deanna Denham Hughes. She asked, "What about when both parents work full time?" I imagine that's when she means how to create a schedule for your kids when both parents work full time. So how to do that when now a lot of parents still have to go to work or work.
Wonderful question. So, of course, in Hong Kong, we often depend, although not always, on domestic helpers.
Yes.
To fill in as parents.
Yes.
Another topic which I'd love to come back and talk about at some point, honestly.
No, I think
it's an underappreciated, under-discussed topic here in Hong Kong. I think there's some, there's some social and political tension around that issue. But in this matter of this crisis and the anxiety that exists, and having this unscheduled, unstructured time, I think working closely with your domestic helper to develop this schedule, including her in mapping out how the day is and listening to her input, that is so important. So in a way, it becomes more like co-parenting.
Yes.
And you're depending on not only co-parenting, but also co-teaching.
Yeah.
You become the teacher, and then the domestic helper becomes the teacher. It doesn't mean the domestic helper has to have the degree of a teacher, obviously, but be able to guide the child to get the work done. So that might mean building in a reward system that would include the domestic helper giving the reward, the praise. You might have to do some role playing with the domestic helper if he or she. Some of them are wonderful. I mean, they do
absolutely
fabulous, better than most parents.
Agreed.
Others are not as comfortable doing that, doing some role playing with them or practicing with the children in a non-demeaning way, of course.
Of course.
And I think seeing them as part of the solution to helping kids be able to not only get their work done, but to overcome boredom, for example, being creative around the house, involving the kids more, for example, in some of the daily activities. So that it's a good opportunity for the domestic helper then to teach
Yes, I
kids
agree.
how to cook,
I agree.
how to clean.
Mhm.
Something that doesn't often, I shouldn't say that, often does not happen
No, I agree.
in Hong Kong.
Yeah, it can definitely be involved in moments such as that when the helper still has all her chores. Why not involve the child?
That's
In
right. That's
absolutely.
right.
Going back to achieving and going back to just parents
Yes.
themselves, how I imagine that a lot of parents are feeling isolated in not
Mhm.
only in the actual sense of isolation, but also in their minds of isolation, of not being able to go to work, everything being canceled. How to feel less isolated? What would you advise parents to do to
Yeah.
cope with that feeling?
Well, again, we might have limited options in some ways because
Yeah.
many people are curtailing sort of the normal social activities, going out to eat, for example, or getting together for meetings for, let's say, people in professional meetings or even social organizations. So many things have been canceled.
Yeah.
So there aren't those opportunities. Goes back to having a social network. Now, some
Mhm.
people don't have as big a social network as others. I would say reach out, and this may require a fair amount of work, but to reach out to people you feel comfortable talking with, whether it be physically here in Hong Kong or virtually in perhaps your home country or in any country for that matter, people that you've known, or maybe reconnecting with people. And
Mhm.
my approach to this often is to be very honest and open with people, saying, it is tough here in Hong Kong, and I often feel very lonely here. If you feel comfortable saying that, or if maybe a little bit less dramatic form of that, might say, it feels a little isolating here.
Yeah,
And would you have some time to talk?
of course.
And this might be, let's say, with a relative you haven't talked with for a long time. You might do that. I mean, that's just one thing, or a friend you haven't talked to maybe in years.
And of course, discussing with your husband or wife, your partner. Do you think that I find that potentially couples often also find each other quite isolated in such moments, thinking about how to create a balance for their own lives and not thinking as
Well,
a unit anymore, potentially.
a good point is that's a good point, and I think a part of that is that when people feel anxious,
Yes,
irrationally nervous, that they tend to isolate themselves.
exactly.
And you're absolutely right. It's the time for couples to come together and talk more. And that may, again, take a lot of effort.
Hmm.
And it may actually increase some of the anxiety initially, but
Yeah.
hopefully most couples and husbands and wives or boyfriend and girlfriends can feel much more cared about and not so much alone by talking, ultimately.
But I do think that adults, including myself, can find it very hard to begin a conversation that is quite emotional with another adult. How to start such conversations, how to really to get over yourself and to really begin, like you said, to really to start a conversation that you might not have spoken to a person in a long time. How to even approach it?
I always go back to, again, similar to what I said a moment ago,
Yeah.
acknowledging this might
Okay.
be awkward. I feel
Okay, that's a
it's
good thing.
something like my words might be, this feels kind of awkward.
Okay.
And I don't know if you feel awkward about this, but I really wanted to talk to somebody, and you seem like a great person to talk to about, feeling like there's really nobody to talk to here near home.
Absolutely.
And can we talk about that?
Okay.
And, that's the way I might say it. Other people might say it differently, but I think to acknowledge how awkward and how difficult it is, to put it right on the table.
Absolutely. Would you advise people to actually have these conversations? Because I know nowadays people are having a difficulty to have conversations face to face or on the phone. People tend to talk to each other via text. Would you advise to have these conversations physically, like, or
I
does it
always
matter?
prefer seeing somebody face to face, as we're doing right now,
Yes.
and talking with each other.
Hmm.
If it feels more comfortable at first to message, by
Yeah.
all means do that.
Okay.
But I would see that as an entree to then maybe talking over the phone,
Hmm.
or ideally talking by video, or obviously in person would be the most ideal situation, but certainly virtually over the internet would I think is maybe as close as some people can get at this point.
Yeah.
But yes, messaging is fine.
Okay,
But I think I would not just stay with messaging.
no,
Because you miss so much in the communication. You miss a good part of what's being said. And it's also ripe for misunderstanding as well.
absolutely. No, I agree with that. That is the end of our interview, Dr. Adler. Thank you so much for coming today. Have we missed anything? Is there anything that you wish to say that I have not asked you?
I think just a take-home message would be is to be aware of one's own anxiety.
Yeah.
And again, we're talking about irrational fears. No, I'm not talking about, I mean, we all are a little bit nervous about the possibility
Of course, even
of getting the virus, right? We're all
you never know.
right? We're all a little bit nervous.
Yes.
But it should be left, try to keep it at that level.
Yeah.
Even if you feel more anxious, much more nervous than you should, try to keep it under control. Seek professional advice and professional help through a psychologist, a counselor, if you need to.
Yes.
And the same thing would be said for your children, by the way. We could have I should mention that as well. If they seem to be,
of course,
despite the reassurances, having difficulty, seek professional help. But in terms of your own anxiety, try not to communicate that to your children.
Yes.
And talk in positive terms that we are all working together to stay safe and avoid illness.
No, that's a very
good. It may not feel comfortable saying that if you don't necessarily feel that, but I think it's important as parents that sometimes we have to fake it a little bit in order to be able to reassure our kids.
I agree.
And that is so important. If we can do one thing, I think that's one of the most important things, help our kids remain calm.
Absolutely. And
we will get through this at some point.
We will, of course.
We will get through this at some point.
Of course.
And, and there is an end. We don't know when it's going to be exactly. And again, just, not to get off on the subject so much, but, I think the uncertainty of not knowing when schools are going to reopen, we can only just guess. And it's just a wild guess at this point of when they might reopen, to be honest. It creates a lot of uncertainty, which creates realistic nervousness and then anxiety.
Absolutely.
But to remain calm, the world does not come to an end by any means.
No,
it continues on.
It continues on.
And we will get through this period.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you once again, Dr. Adler. This interview will be created into an article very soon. So I'm looking forward to that too.
So am I. And
if people have any further questions, of course, we can get back to you, and you can answer those questions later on as well. We can email them to you. And
I'm glad to answer any questions.
Absolutely. Thank you.
It's been such a pleasure. Again.
Yes, it has. Well, thanks to our audience. Thanks to everyone for joining us. We will see you very soon. And Dr. Adler, just click the left button, leave room.
Thank you so much, Nikki.
Thank you very much.
Talk again. Okay.
Have a good day, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.